trickle in. There we go. So hi, I'm Emma Kelly. I'm the New Economy Field Coordinator for Appalachian Voices. So I work with Emily. And then we're also joined tonight by Josephus. I don't know if you want to introduce yourself right fast, Josephus.
Sure. Josephus Almond. I'm an associate attorney with the Southern Environmental Law Center based here in our Charlottesville office, and have been on the team here for about 2.5 years now.
Right, so I think we can head to the next slide, Emily. So Emily and I both work for Appalachian Voices. We are a regional nonprofit. We hit our 25th anniversary this year, so yay, 25 years old as an organization. We focus on several energy sector issues across North Carolina, Virginia, and Tennessee. And then we also do a lot of work with marginalized or directly impacted communities, supporting a transition away from fossil fuels and extractive economy towards more of a clean energy and regenerative sort of economy. Next slide. So the full solar opportunities in Southwest Virginia, there are a few main ones. Securing Brightfield's funding. So Brightfield is a policy that allows us to put solar arrays on brownfield sites, and a brownfield site is any previously developed site. So that can be abandoned mine lands, it can be logged lands, it can be old factory sites, anything like that. So of course, in Southwest Virginia, we have a lot of these sort of pockets of land. And while they aren't usually big enough for an industrial size solar array, they would work well for shared solar for things like residential or multifamily housing. So we are trying to get that funded. That's the main thing we'll be working on. Also fixing the shared solar minimum bill. Shared solar programs exist for customers of Dominion Energy, but those programs are often really expensive. So we're trying to bring down that cost for Dominion's customers. And then just generally bringing shared solar to Southwest Virginia, especially in APCO and ODP territories. All right.
All right, I'm going to play a quick little video here that we made last year. And some of you may recognize this video. We had some previous Shared Solar Action Team members who were featured in it. And this will hopefully give us a little bit of a better idea about what shared solar actually is and how it could benefit Southwest Virginia. So let me just get this started here.
Since about 2016, people in Southwest Virginia have been working to increase access to solar energy across the region. However, rooftop solar installations may not be an option for many homes and businesses. This can be due to shading, finances, or living situation. Luckily, there is another way to make sure solar energy is available to everyone. Shared solar, often referred to as community solar, is a way to make solar energy more affordable and accessible to local residents, organizations, and businesses. By using solar panels from a nearby field, abandoned mine land, or large building, anyone who can't afford their own solar system, who doesn't own their building, or who lacks a suitable site for solar panels can still benefit from cheaper, clean energy. This gives everyone who pays an electricity bill access to solar.
The idea of putting solar panels on my house's rooftop is not appealing at all due to its orientation, trees, and all that type of thing. But a community solar project would allow me to participate in a very real way in the solution of locally generated electricity that I and my community would end up having some amount of say in how it's implemented, how it expands, and just having that level of participation in something that we use on a daily basis.
By subscribing to a shared solar array, customers can reduce the total cost of their energy consumption while gaining control over where and how they get their electricity. Shared solar also boosts the local solar industry, providing much-needed jobs and energy savings in the communities that need them the most.
Well, although the cost of developing and manufacturing solar technology continues to come down, the reality is solar is still not affordable for most people. And that's especially true for low-income families that are struggling just to put food on the table. Shared solar and community solar programs remove that barrier. They're a potent solution by removing the obstacle of having to individually own an array and making it more affordable.
Across the country, shared solar is recognized as one of the best opportunities for low-income and other disadvantaged communities to go solar. Unfortunately, this program is not currently available in Southwest Virginia, despite availability in other parts of the state.
All right, so I'm going to pause the video there because we are going to talk tonight about why shared solar isn't available here and what we all can be doing to make it a reality in Southwest Virginia. Emma, was there anything that you wanted to add here?
No, it's all yours.
All right. So just to recap a little bit about what shared solar is from that video. So it's a solar array that serves multiple customers. So it's different in that way from rooftop solar, because most like residential rooftop solar installations just serve the customer that's installed it. So usually a single household. And this shared solar project is located offsite. So it'll be, sold for multiple people and be a smaller array that isn't connected to a house that it's serving. It's often owned by a third-party developer who works with the utility to create the array and then make sure that interested people who want to participate in shared solar are signed up for the program. One really good thing about shared solar is it doesn't require like a home ownership, for example. You don't have to put the array on your roof, as I mentioned a moment ago. And so it's really good for renters or for people whose roofs just aren't appropriate for solar. So if you have, like Clyde in the video mentioned, shady trees, or sorry, trees that are shading your roof, you don't have to put, you don't have to worry about cutting them down or maybe not having enough sun for the panels. Because again, the array is located offsite. And then another concern for a lot of people is that their roof just isn't up to date, maybe needs some significant repairs to put solar on it. And so you can kind of circumvent that by just participating in shared solar rather than installing an array of your own. I do want to note that a lot of times in other states, this kind of array is called a community solar project. But that's not what it's called in Virginia, because community solar refers to a different, very specific kind of program. So we call it shared solar, but it's essentially the same thing. Just quickly wanted to go over some of the other benefits of shared solar. So as you can see from this slide, there's quite a bit of shared solar installed across the United States. That's from the Solar Energy Industries Association. In 2022, there was just a little bit over 5 gigawatts of shared solar that were installed. And so you can see there's more of this type of array, more capacity from shared solar than from residential rooftop solar. And then, it's still not nearly as much as like the big utility scale solar projects that we're hearing a lot about these days, but definitely complements that. And it has an additional benefit because these are smaller arrays. You don't need to necessarily clear as much forest or ag land, or like take over as much ag land, agricultural land to build an array of this size. Adds a lot of benefits to the grid in terms of reliability and just kind of building out that distributed and energy system. And then, as I was saying earlier, no ownership is required. It's available to renters. So it's just a very accessible form of solar. So Josephus is going to get a bit into the policy around shared solar and some of the barriers and access, but just kind of to frame that up quickly, in 2020, the Virginia General Assembly passed legislation that authorized Dominion Energy to create a shared solar program, but Appalachian Power was not included in that legislation. And I'll show you a map here in a moment so you can kind of see where shared solar is and isn't available. And then last year, with the work of the Shared Solar Action Team, we were able to have a bill introduced to make Appalachian Power create a shared solar program. And that bill didn't pass, but what did happen was that the General Assembly authorized a stakeholder group to get together and research the benefits and the impacts of such a program in Southwest Virginia. And so we're hoping to build on that in the 2023 session. And real quickly, here is that map. So anywhere that you have this bright yellow color, that's Dominion Energy. And so folks who live in those service areas would be eligible for participating in a shared solar program, but where you have the red and the dark green, and you can see that's pretty much the entire southwestern part of Virginia, the program is just simply not available. So we're trying to make it possible all across Virginia. And with that, I'm going to turn things over to you, Josephus, and I can stop sharing my screen for this part too. Josephus, did you have slides that you wanted me to share?
Oh, I didn't have slides. No,
Okay.
I was just gonna talk about some of the policy barriers. I was going to talk a bit about the shared solar stakeholder group that
Okay.
took place to consider the feasibility of a program in APCO's territory. So that stakeholder group met over the last couple of months. We had 4 day-long meetings in total, and we had a facilitator called Sustainable Energy Advantage who was leading the group, and they presented us with sort of the existing rules as they apply to the Dominion program, and then explored alternatives in each of those similar areas. And so the stakeholder participants got to give feedback on kind of the existing rules, what they thought of the alternatives, and whether or not they had any other alternatives in mind that hadn't been discussed. And I think in that stakeholder group, we saw a lot of arguments that we saw from Dominion in the proceedings to establish their minimum bill for their shared solar program, which is that as Emily and Emma have mentioned, the facilities aren't located on site. And so the incumbent utility still has the responsibility to provide power to subscribing customers. And if they aren't being compensated in some way, they're worried that that lost revenue is going to harm non-participating customers. And so we looked at sort of the benefits of the shared solar facilities that can provide. Emily touched on it a bit earlier, but benefits to the distribution grid because these smaller arrays are located usually closer to load. And so while it's not serving the subscribing customers, it is helping the grid out in the location where it's sited. And so we're expecting those arguments from the utility going forward, but having participated in the sort of litigation over Dominion's shared solar minimum bill, we've got some good arguments to counter the utility position. So right now, like Emily mentioned, it's only available to Dominion, and the legislation specifically spells out that only phase 2 utilities are able to participate, not phase 1 utilities, which APCO is. And so looking to expand that program to include phase 1 utilities like APCO in the upcoming legislative session to provide this opportunity for all of APCO's customers. There's also efforts among environmental groups to come up with a solution for the minimum bill that was just approved for Dominion's program. So if y'all weren't aware, the State Corporation Commission recently approved a minimum bill of $55.10 a month for Dominion's shared solar program. Low-income customers are exempt from that minimum bill, but all the remaining customers are still going to be required to pay that minimum bill, and then whatever the subscription fee is to the third-party solar developer. And with the minimum bill being $55, it's very likely that participating in this program will become more expensive than just remaining a normal Dominion customer. And so as those groups are working on potential legislative fixes to the minimum bill, we're also keeping that minimum bill issue in mind for the APCO program. So we'll be looking to establish some protections around how high the minimum bill can be, to ensure that folks who participate are able to see bill savings if and when this program does become live in APCO's service territory.
Thank you for that, Josephus. That was really interesting.
Sure.
Do we have any questions or anything so far about shared solar? I know we just sort of threw a lot of information at you, and it's a pretty complicated concept. So we're going to take a minute to see if anybody wants to clarify anything that's been mentioned so far.
This is Bill Baker. The bill was for shared solar in Southwest Virginia was introduced, as Emily said, and I would assume that all the necessary research had been done. Otherwise, why introduce a bill if you haven't planned ahead of time? So I think the stalling was purely political and lobbying. I mean, APCO lobbies like crazy in Richmond, Virginia. So I think that's what stalled it. But we need it badly. I live in a nonprofit senior living facility, and we have a lot of HUD patients, what am I saying, clients, residents. So we have to work with all the those regulations, but then we have a lot of other people who would benefit from it because they live in shady areas, etc. So I do live in a section of the senior living area where we own our own homes, and we have about, out of 60 homes, I think we have close to 20 homes that have solar on their roofs. So that's good.
Yeah, I think that provides a good segue into the next section, which is what do we want members of the Shared Solar Action Team to do? But before I move on to that, does anybody else have any questions about shared solar or the power territories or the policy bills that have been introduced in the past? Going once, going twice.
Well, I had
Okay.
a quick thing that maybe Josephus, I was hoping you might be able to talk about. Bill mentioned some of the lobbying power in the General Assembly, and I know you've been working really closely on the new bill for this coming year. So do you have any sense of what we'll be up against this year? That might be different from last year, or just kind of give us a idea of what to expect.
Yeah, I think we can expect, based on what we heard in the stakeholder group about expanding it into APCO's territory, and based on the Commission's recent decision around the minimum bill, I think we'll hear a lot about how APCO is a different utility than Dominion, and how they serve a smaller customer base in Virginia that's shrinking. They'll make arguments about how they're a winter peaking utility, unlike Dominion, which is a summer peaking utility. And they'll point to the Commission's recent decision on the minimum bill to make the argument that, look, for Dominion's program that currently exists, there has to be a high minimum bill to compensate the utility for participating in this program. Otherwise, we're just going to be losing out on revenue, and other customers are going to have to sort of foot the bill for that. And so we've got to be prepared to address those points and talk about them. And working with CCSA, the Coalition for Community Solar Access, they've been doing a really good job working on minimum bill fixes, and they were very active in the litigation. But I think we'll be able to make good arguments to legislators about the value to the distribution grid. And then another concept that came up in the APCO Shared Solar group was the idea of having the renewable energy certificates from these shared solar facilities, instead of giving those, allowing the subscriber solar organization to keep those, an idea came out about having those RECs count towards APCO's compliance with the Clean Economy Act. So that might be another sort of negotiating tool to be able to point to a tangible benefit that APCO would receive, sort of in exchange for losing some revenue from participating customers. I think we'll definitely have the same legislative push from their lobbyists to keep them out of the program. But I think the environmental groups and the trade groups working on this issue have done some good work in the litigation at the State Corporation Commission, and have started doing some good work with legislators, helping to educate them on the issues, and showing them that, a program like this is and will be a benefit to APCO, despite the differences in their utility service territories and customer profile, and winter peaking status. So I think the stakeholder group that a lot of folks just participated in gave us a good preview of what APCO will be telling legislators when these bills are introduced. And so we've got some time to come up with our best rebuttals and be prepared to present those to legislators. I think we've got a good chance.
Great, thanks for that preview of what we can expect. Emma, I guess I'll turn it back over to you, and I'm going to share my screen again here.
Can I ask a question once on Josephus? When you look at the accounting that goes into the minimum bill, is it legitimate?
The sort of accounting that the utilities gave and staff gave about sort of the costs that existing customers already pay and how they'll be still, required to pay those same costs. Yeah, I think the numbers behind, the minimum bill proposals, they weren't, false or wrong or anything. We just think the utility is going about it at a different way, and they're not ascribing the level of value that we think the shared solar facilities provide to their distribution systems. And so we think that's a key piece that's missing out of their minimum bill analysis, is they're looking at all the potential lost revenues and potential cost shift that could happen, but they're not holistically taking into account the benefits that these facilities will give to the distribution system. So I think that's where there was a little bit of disconnect in between what the utilities were advocating for and then what environmental and trade groups were arguing at the commission.
Thank you.
Sure.
And I actually have a quick question looking at what Chris has posted in the chat. Why are shared solar arrays treated differently, especially in APCO territory, than in an individual or residential solar array?
Yeah, and I think that has to do with what Emily brought up close to the beginning of the call, which is the fact that there isn't a locational requirement for the shared solar facilities. So when you have a system on your own home and you're doing the net metering program, a lot of the energy that you're generating is actually being used by yourself. Your electrical load is using a lot of that energy. And so instead of the utility having to provide you with a source of generation, they're only having to continue minor transmission and distribution sort of upgrades to keep you connected. But with that solar on your own roof, you're producing a lot of your own power. The difference with the shared solar program is that you could, in theory, have 40 customers and Ys who are subscribed to a facility that's sited in Abington. And in that case, the electricity that facility is generating is going into the distribution system in Abington. So the subscribers and Ys, they're not getting those electrons. And so APCO still has to generate power. It still has to maintain the transmission and distribution lines to get them power. And so I think that's the main difference. The outcome for the multifamily shared solar program was a little bit different, I think, in part because the multifamily shared solar program required the shared solar facilities to be located either on the multifamily property or adjacent to. And so you get a lot of those same benefits of the solar energy you're generating actually addressing your own need.
All right, thank you for clearing that up. So I think now we can segue into what the Shared Solar Action Team is and what we're sort of looking to do in the coming months. So basically, the action team is just a group of citizens who are, actively trying to make viable shared solar programs happen in Southwest Virginia. We are facilitated by Appalachian Voices, the organization that Emily and I both work for. And in the past, some of the work has included gathering support through petitions, letters to the editor, lobbying for the General Assembly, doing a lot of tabling and community outreach. And then just creating the shared solar video that you guys actually watched a few minutes ago to help spread the news about shared solar. So what we're looking to do is especially influence the upcoming 2023 General Assembly session, which happens mid-January to the end of February. And there's several ways to get involved, depending on how involved you want to be, what sort of actions you're comfortable taking. We have things like constituent meetings with state representatives and state senators. Those would be facilitated by Appalachian Voices. They might be virtual, they might be in person. That's something we have to gauge depending on who we're trying to reach and what their availability is. More letters to the editor, more op-eds, just again, spreading awareness of shared solar, making sure people know the benefits, making sure people are aware that not only does it exist, but there are active barriers preventing it from being shared across the region and that we can do something about those barriers. And then lobbying, which can also be done either virtually or in person. We've talked about trying to have an in-person lobby day in Richmond. So, the action team takes a little road trip, goes up to Richmond and has those face-to-face interactions, really trying to get these policies passed. And then always community outreach. That includes door knocking, flyers, connecting one-on-one with folks. If you know that your neighbor has a sister who has talked about solar, getting those connections, maybe looping them in with Emily and I so we can talk to them and building this network out. Emily, have I missed anything?
No, I don't think so. I mean, the main point is just that as they did last year, we're hoping Shared Solar Action Team members can help put pressure on elected officials to pass the shared solar bill that we want, and then to spread the word and raise awareness within our communities. So I think you can have both of those things.
Awesome.
Oh, I did not mean to switch to the slide, but I guess this is probably where we're at now.
Yeah, it really is. The holiday season is coming up, and unfortunately it's holidays and then General Assembly, so timing is a little bit funky, but we're hoping to have another Shared Solar Action Team meeting on November 30th, and then 2 weeks later on December 14th. And those will be really in-depth strategizing sessions. If we decide to do an in-person lobby day, if we're trying to set up constituent meetings, this will be where we sit down and plan out what we're actually going to do to get shared solar in the region. They'll both be virtual. They'll be at 6 p.m. on Wednesday, just like tonight. And we welcome anybody who wants to come.
Yeah, and I put Emma and my emails up at the top here. Super easy. Our first names at voices.org. And then I can put those in the chat too. And then I'm going to stop sharing my screen because I wanted to share another link in the chat here. If you're interested in kind of getting on our email list about the Shared Solar Action Team, and if you aren't already signed up for that, you can click on that link and sign up there. And I saw that Josephus put his email in the chat as well. Yeah. He's got all the answers to the technical questions. So thank you, Josephus. Super glad you were able to provide that overview of shared solar.
So I think for the last, little bit of this meeting / webinar, we were really just thinking it would be more of an open discussion for, if folks have any ideas, other ways to talk about solar, lobby for solar, or just any other questions about the sort of current power arrangements within different power territories. Because I know in the chat talking about APCO versus Old Dominion and what's allowed in which territory.
Yeah,
So I'll open it.
This is Bill, and the bill that was introduced in the last legislative session never even made it to a vote. So it got stalled right in committee. So we have to focus on those committee members to launch it and get it up for a vote. I mean, I would love to visit my delegate and Senate. Well, my senator is for this because he was one of the people that partially, I think he partly introduced the bill. But we can talk to the delegates, but unless it gets out of committee, that's what we need to work on, getting it out for a vote.
Mhm.
Am I thinking correctly on that?
Yeah, I think so. I'm gonna put links. I realize I just put links to the House Committee on Commerce and Energy, which is one of the committees that heard the bill last year. But I think, and Josephus, please correct me if I'm wrong, but right now we have a Senate strategy for the bill. So we'd want to focus commerce and labor, and I'll put a link to that committee in the chat as well. Is the committee that would likely hear the bill. So if you click on those links, you can see who sits on those committees. I know where Bill and I are. Our senator is Senator Edwards, and he sits on the committee and actually carried the shared solar bill, or was a co-sponsor, and has been supportive in the past. So, we already know he's on our side, but if you look at this list, you can see maybe that there's someone serving in your area that you would want to meet with, and just let them know that that you care about this. But yeah, getting to the committee members first, I think, is key.
Mhm.
And we can set up constituent meetings. I think Emma I don't think you were with us at this time last year.
No.
She wasn't a part of the Shared Solar Action Team before, but we met with committee members virtually. So it was, easy, because I know a lot of us are coming from a pretty broad geographic footprint here. And App Voices set those up and invited Shared Solar Action Team members to come to them. And so, we're happy to do that again. And I think, we can meet with senators and delegates who aren't our personal representatives, if they'll meet with us, just to let them know that, we hope they vote our way when this bill comes before them. We know what APCO's doing. APCO's trying to get to them too, so.
Well, last 2 years ago, I guess I met with each one of the Board of Supervisors of Montgomery County, and they have some influence in Richmond. And it might be wise to even work on a very local level and meet with them, or go to a meeting and do a presentation.
Yeah, that's another good point. I think, and last year, Bill and I met with the sustainability director in Blacksburg. And then I went to one of their city council meetings and asked them, the city council, to submit a letter to the legislature to let them know that they were supportive of shared solar as well. And they did that. So if you're interested in talking to your city council members or local government officials, we can help facilitate that as well.
And, most of those meetings have a public comment section anyway. If you just want to show up at a meeting and get up and speak for a couple minutes about shared solar, they have time set aside for that already.
Great.
And we can make talking points. I'm working on some right now. We
Okay.
can do everything that you might need to help prep you for that.
Bill, and to your point about it stalling in committee last year, I think part of that had to do with the fact that there were some solar developers that weren't on the same page yet when the legislation was brought. And so when it was in committee, they still had folks from the industry that couldn't agree on certain provisions, which made the legislators hesitant to move forward. But this year we've got a really good strategy working with Coalition for Community Solar Access and a bunch of solar developers. So I think we'll be more on the same page and ready to address the committee hearings.
Great.
I see another good question from Chris in the chat about what is the specific meaning of community solar in Virginia, since we're differentiating between community and shared solar.
Can you take that, Josephus?
I can. I don't have the full answer with me. I do know that before I joined SELC, I believe in 2017 or 2018, the General Assembly authorized both Dominion and APCO, as well as co-ops, to offer community solar programs. And so I think there was some work at the State Corporation Commission to sort of set the regulations for those programs. But at the end of the day, I don't think Dominion or APCO offered those community solar programs. So I don't think there's any current participants in the programs, even though they're authorized by law. And so when it came around in 2020, shared solar was sort of the name given to the program to differentiate it from the already existing community solar program that didn't have a lot of success.
Do we have any other questions or thoughts on shared solar or anything we've talked about tonight? Is there a lot of enthusiasm for generating some action for shared solar?
Yes.
Yes.
I guess I'm curious. We're kind of a small group, so maybe, and we have a little bit of time here. I'd like to know, I know Bill and Ellen, you're in Montgomery County and then close to Roanoke and Lynchburg. But where are the rest of you all from? Are you APCO or Appalachian Power customers?
This is Chris. I'm in Roanoke, Virginia, so I'm an APCO customer, and I'm still not understanding why a location off-site is different from a location on-site in terms of sharing the power between the utility and the solar customer.
I think.
Oh, go ahead, Emma.
Oh, I was going to say, and again, correct me if I'm just completely mischaracterizing this. I think it boils down to it's a lot more work for the utility to maintain an offsite, solar array, and to make sure that the power is getting transmitted, as opposed to having, just a singular installation on a house. It's just more work for the utility.
Yeah, my understanding is that the utility will end up billing each of those customers. Let's say there are 40 customers on a shared solar system. I think that they will have to do the billing for each one of those customers. Whether that represents more work for them or tweaking their computer program, I don't know.
Okay.
There is some.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Josephus.
Oh no, I was just going to say to Bill's point. Administrative costs of the program were an issue in the Dominion proceedings. They had a placeholder administrative charge in the shared solar program, and they estimated it could be anywhere from $10 to $20 a month for them to process all of the bills for the folks that would be subscribing in the program. But they do have a customer information platform that is coming online in the summer of 2023. And the hope is that's going to automate a lot of that process and make those administrative costs fall.
Yeah, and then just the final thing I was gonna say too is that like the shared solar arrays serve a lot of people. They can be up to 5 megawatts in general. So a 5 megawatt array is going to take up about 50 acres. And so that's a lot of solar panels and a lot of energy that can be produced from that type of array. And you're just not going to get that off of like a roof to a house, you know, to a smaller building. So it's a bit about, I think, the size of the project as well.
Now, also, can we talk to legislators about the fact that this is a energy democracy or energy justice issue as well? You know, the people who are low on the totem pole as far as financial status goes often live close to the facilities that generate, which aren't very clean in the case of coal and even natural gas. So I think we have to seek some energy justice in all of this as well.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a really important point to emphasize. You know, you can try and boil it down to just economics and the number crunching, but you have to, like, you absolutely have to take into account the social impacts on the surrounding communities.
Right.
Yeah, and one of the things to that point, or the energy justice point, and the ability to be able to afford solar or shared solar, with the Dominion program, there's a carve out in the bill so that low income households don't have to pay high minimum fees to participate in shared solar. And that's something we want to see in the Appalachian Power shared solar bill as well. That way, you know, those households that aren't earning as much money, you know, can still try to participate in a program that should bring their overall energy costs down and allow them to contribute to the clean energy transition. So that's another thing to highlight as well.
Do low income customers have a benefit if they're not in a solar system? I mean, just if they're general utility customers, do they get any benefit? No, okay.
Just you mean in general, like a reduction in their bill?
Right.
Yeah, no. So it's probably even more important that we get those people signed up for programs that can reduce their overall costs.
Any comments or questions from folks who haven't spoken? Okay, well, Emily and I will, of course, be sending out reminder emails for the meeting on November 30th. We'll start thinking about setting up constituent meetings, letters to the editor. If you've heard anything that caught your attention and you'd like to talk more about involvement, email Emily, email myself. We're happy to set up one-on-ones and talk with you about how you can be involved. Other thoughts, Emily or Josephus?
Will this recording be available to us? Would you send a link to it or something?
Absolutely.
Good.
Yeah, and I can send the little video, and I think we have a web page from last year that had more resources and general information about shared solar. It is kind of a tricky concept, and I think it takes some time to just kind of dig in and try to understand what it really is. So I'll try to make sure that we're able to direct all of y'all to those resources as well.
I just wanted to say thanks to Emma and Emily for inviting me to, come talk to y'all and answer some questions. I'm excited about the prospect of expanding shared solar into APCO's territory, and I'm looking forward to working with all of you on that over the next several months. So thank you.
And we appreciate your expertise.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Josephus.